Welcome back to the Cap Report. In this video, we're going to talk about UFC 257, what happened, its aftermath, and where the lightweight division goes now. Before you guys say anything, yes, I know this is late, but I wanted to still make the video. I have like 2 or 3 other video ideas that are going to be like late on their topics too, but you know what? I figure if I want to talk about it, I want to make a video on it, right? And there were a couple videos I thought about and kind of wanted to make, and so I figured I would just kind of push them all into this one video, just talking about the aftermath in general, because I wanted to talk about McGregor specifically in terms of how people are talking about him post 257, and then also, you know, Dustin Poirier not getting the credit that he deserves from this win, and just, yeah, where the division goes. So we're going to start with just some initial reactions, starting with the main event, McGregor and Poirier. What a game plan by Poirier and his team. That was the blueprint to beat McGregor, at least in his current state. And Poirier executed it perfectly, beautifully. He really deserved this win in this fight, in this moment, I think. So I'm really happy for him in that regard. I was surprised that he was able to get the finish in the second round. You know, I predicted that, you know, he'd have to do a lot of these things, leg kicks and, you know, staying away from like brawling and going shot for shot. But the fact that, you know, I thought he'd have to go into the later rounds to get the finish, I didn't see it very likely that he'd get one that early. And so that was actually, you know, really impressive. And I think that he's not getting the credit that he deserves for this, right? A lot of the talk has been about what went wrong for McGregor. But really, I think the story of this fight is what Poirier did right. I think McGregor losing was more of Poirier doing right than McGregor doing wrong per se. Well, partly McGregor doing wrong, but I think that more credit goes to Poirier winning than McGregor losing. And I feel like I see a lot of the opposite with that. In McGregor's end, I don't think the loss was as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. I'm going to go into this more later in the video, but like Poirier's probably a top 10 lightweight of all time at this point. McGregor, it was not a bad loss for him. He hasn't fought, he fought last year, but at lightweight, it's been like 3 years since he's fought. So obviously you expect him to win every fight, but it was still a solid showing. He won the first round. The cardio looked a little bit better. I don't know, it's hard to say. You can tell that, you know, he hasn't been active enough in the sport the way the calf kicks just threw him for a complete shock. I really think we'll just have to see a lot more of him. You know, I'm interested to see, because I know he wants to fight like 3 times this year, and I'm really interested. I want to see what he looks like bouncing back from this. You know, he picked probably one of the harder opponents for him to come back against, but I don't know. I'll get into him more later. And now we'll move to the co-main event, Michael Chandler versus Dan Hooker, and that one I was way off on my prediction. The result of that fight surprised me so much. I was not expecting that at all. I really was like set on Hooker was going to win that. Chandler, he really surprised me. That was a performance that I did not expect at all. He set up that knockout beautifully. You know, he had to break the distance with Hooker because Hooker had that reach advantage and cut inside, and he set it up multiple times, looking inside, looking low, looking high. That ultimately, when he went in for the knockout, he just kept his eyes looking down. He kept straight down. So Hooker was focused low. Like, he's focused looking down at Chandler, because Chandler was looking at his hips after shooting in, and I believe he threw a low punch, and then Hooker facing down at him never saw the left just come in, like the looping left. I think it was the left. It might have been a right. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. It's been a couple days since I watched the fights, but point being is he totally caught Hooker lacking, for lack of a better way to put it. But now for Hooker, I don't even know what to say about the performance. As I said, I agree with a lot of people that he looked out of it and looked a little off. And I know he didn't have any trainer, or he didn't have his main coach with him there either, so maybe that was part of it. But I don't want to take away too much from the win for Chandler. I don't know really what there is to take away from Hooker. I mean, he had one. He hit Chandler once, and you know it was a good hit. All in all, he tried to take the opportunity, but didn't turn out well for him, and I'm interested to see where he goes from here. I mean, I definitely think he's young enough that he can still have another go. Lightweight's such a volatile division that anyone really, I don't want to say anyone has a chance at the title, but all you got to do is string together a few wins, unless you're Tony Ferguson, of course, and you will have that title shot. now moving on, I want to talk about how people have been talking about McGregor following this fight. This was an idea I wanted to make its own video, but because I'm behind so badly, I just was like, let's just put it in here. It's, similar topic. It follows, UFC 257. And I don't know. I don't I'm not a McGregor fan, right? Honestly, like when I was younger, like during McGregor's come up, I was probably a McGregor hater, to be honest. Like, bro, I remember the Mendes fight. I was so mad. I was one of those guys with the who was talking about, man, if Mendes was on a full camp, he would have won. If it was, he gassed out because it was on 2 weeks and all that type of stuff. So I just want to put context to this. I'm not a McGregor fan. I'm not a hater as much anymore. But why is everyone saying he's washed, he's done, he needs to retire? This is not true at all. Like, he's lost 3 fights in the UFC, right? That's another thing, right? People, he's got 5 losses. He lost, 3 of his last 5 or something, 4 of his last 5 or 6, if you count the Mayweather fight, which I don't think really should count for this, right? You transitioned into another, a specific martial art, and you fought one of the all-time greats, if not the GOAT of that. So I don't think that loss really carries much merit. But for the others, right? Let's look at his losses really quickly, right? In the UFC, he has 3 losses within the UFC. His first one came to Nate Diaz, who he avenged that loss. His second loss came to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who is arguably the greatest UFC lightweight of all time, or lightweight of all time, possibly. I don't know, that's a bit debatable, but one of the most dominant fighters of all time, right? A top 20 all-time UFC fighter, right? So that's not a bad loss. And then he lost to Dustin Poirier, who, as I said previously, I think, he's a top 10 lightweight of all time, maybe top 5. I don't know about all that, but I'd have to, that might be a video I have to make too, but I don't see this. Like, everyone's saying he's washed, he's done, and he's not. It's just, he just hasn't been active enough, right? That if once he becomes a more active fighter and he catches back up with the sport a little bit, and I think that he can be just as good as he was before. I honestly think that he can still win a title, and partly, as I said, because the way lightweight is, you never know who's going to be the champ, and if you get a good matchup and whatnot, you got a good shot at getting it then, right? But it's so crazy because people, before this fight, people were talking about how, Conor's the guy no one wants to fight. He can wash the whole division, right? And obviously that was hyperbole, I think, and there were a lot of unknowns with Conor, so that tied into it too. But now it's the same people who will be saying, he's done, he's not the same guy. And it's like things that there's no way for us to know that they'll claim, right? Like, he's not hungry anymore. Now that he's got the money, he can't have the same hunger as he did before, which I see the merit in that argument, but it's like, how do I want to put this? There's no way to know, right? And I think there's plenty of other ways to build hunger other than money. Like, they're like, he's at one point he was, fighting for his, that was his livelihood, and he was trying to become that guy, and now he's that guy, so he's all set, right? Whether he wins or loses, it doesn't change much for him in his life, other than, win-loss record and legacy or whatever. But I think that, a loss like that is something that can be a driving factor, right? I mean, he pointed to the whole legacy thing a lot, and depending on how much he really cares about that could be what gives him his hunger back. So, assuming that he's lost it. But I get the argument, but I don't know how much merit to really put into it. I just, as I said, I don't like this whole, narrative now going around that he's washed up and stuff. Yeah, he hasn't fought a lot. Give him like he wants a season, and he's gonna be competitive. I think looking forward, right? Obviously, UFC definitely has to be careful with who they put him up against. 2 losses in a row for a guy, and I guess part of it's also, right, he goes beyond the UFC bubble, so people see him and they know him, they expect him to win. They think, I have not heard of Dustin Poirier, but I've heard of Conor McGregor, so McGregor should win. But in reality, Poirier is the better fighter, as I said, at this point, at this stage in their career. So, as the UFC's got to be careful who they put him up against. He's a guy, I don't think they want to afford to put on multiple losses and whatnot, but I don't know, man. I just don't like this whole thing. I'm not a Conor fan either. To me, it's just crazy that people are trying to write him off after 2 losses, 3 losses to like all timers, and I don't know. Maybe it's partly because I also never saw well, not never saw him, but I don't really see him as maybe, I don't have to write out a list, but top 20. I don't think he's a top 20 guy all time. So maybe top 30 or something, but I think that you just gotta have relative expectations. And once again, he hasn't fought a lot, so not to make excuses either, but I don't know. It's interesting to see where he'll go. But the fact that people are trying to say after like one loss and he's fought very little in the past couple of years that, you know, he's washed up is wrong. Like, I think that, you know, fighting these last couple of years could have really helped his legacy, but it is what it is. One more thing I just thought about when I had finished listening through to what I had just said was, there's another point that I wanted to make, right? That people were saying that he should retire, which is just, to me, asinine. Like, retire? This dude he's what, 32, I think? How old is McGregor? He's 32 years old. There are plenty of fighters who move into their prime later in their career, which I don't know is, you know, as plausible at lightweight, but my point being, he's got some time still to evolve as a fighter. And I totally forgot that I wrote this up, right? Even I've come victim to the, you know, jumping to a conclusion and saying, oh, this guy should retire. He's past it, right? With who was it with for me? Tyron Woodley. I wrote, like, I remember I had this class and we were writing blogs, right? And it was for a sports class, and I remember after his loss to Gilbert Burns, you know, I wrote that, like, oh, you know, he needs to retire. Actually, no, it was after Covington, because he had lost to Usman, and then Burns, and then Covington, and it's just like, I think it was 15 rounds straight that he had lost, and it's just, that was bad, right? But I remember looking back at it, and it wasn't that his ability dipped, it was that he wasn't evolving as a fighter, right? He needed to up his game and his style and adapt more to the guys he was fighting and growing as a fighter, right? And I think this is similar to the Conor situation, right? Yeah, he lost to, you know, some top level guys, and all he's got to do is, he just needs to evolve as a fighter. Alright, so I'm editing the video now, and there's one last kind of note that I wanted to make, and that's that it is possible, like, looking back on it, it is possible that Conor, you know, isn't the same fighter that he was before, or that, you know, that we'll never see him fight at the same level, maybe, or maybe, you know, the quality of him as a fighter has dipped. But the overall point is, it's frustrating how no one wants to treat these type of situations with nuance at all, right? It's kind of like how I said earlier, in that before the fight with Poirier, it was he's gonna wash everyone. You know, he could sweep the division, and suddenly, just like that, after one fight, it switched to he's washed up and that he can't compete anymore. And to me, it's like, come on, let's treat the situation with nuance like it deserves. That there's very well a chance that he's not the same guy, but there's just as much of a chance that he can bounce back. And yeah, that's my main frustration with this whole thing, is that I do think that, as I said, I personally think that he can still be an elite fighter. I mean, there is a chance that he isn't, but it's just like, come on, guys, let's be real here. I mean, he could still be a top guy. Finally, let's look at where the division goes from here. As I said, the aftermath, what these fights mean for the division, and where we go from here. And I think, first off, Khabib should be stripped of the title. I do agree with McGregor in that regard, that if he doesn't plan to fight, and he said he doesn't want to hold the division, the title needs to either be relinquished or stripped. And then from there, you take Poirier, and he should fight Oliveira for the undisputed title. I already see that the UFC is supposedly pushing for Chandler too, but I agree with Poirier that he needs another fight. I don't want to say like how Poirier says he needs to pay his dues, but I think that Hooker was ranked 6th, I think, maybe 5th. He needs another top 5 guy, and I think the move for him should be Gaethje before he gets a title shot, because Gaethje's coming off the title shot loss, and Chandler's 1 away, and I think it's fair to put whoever wins that against the winner of Poirier and Oliveira. McGregor, who he should go against next, as I said, the UFC needs to be careful about who he fights. I think the Diaz trilogy would be a cool look, because I don't think you're gonna get the chance at that if McGregor gets the title back. Maybe you do, but I don't think it makes sense because Diaz would need to pick up a win 2 or 3 to get a title shot. I think right now might be your best chance to get that trilogy. It'd be a big, it'd be big money, and Conor should win it. And I think that gives him, a little bit of a launch pad back up in the division. It's not because it's not, a big win in terms of, who's who or what, not who's who, but rankings in the division, but it's gonna do big numbers. People are gonna see it, they're gonna have interest again. It gives him a chance to really get time back in the octagon, and he should win it. So as it gives him a launching pad back up. I see another but what people are putting up against is Ferguson, and that makes sense to me too. That makes sense to me too. Ferguson's coming off 2 losses now, and I mean, realistically, he probably shouldn't have fought at all since the Gaethje fight still, but he's fought, and he got beat up bad by Oliveira. So I think that I don't want to be like, I think that he could beat McGregor, but in his current state, I don't think so. He sustained a lot of damage in his last 2 fights, and it could really wear into a fight with McGregor if that's this year. So yeah, at least the way I see it, it should be Poirier, Oliveira, Gaethje, and Chandler, and then you take McGregor and fight a maybe Diaz or Ferguson. I agree with that one too. The way it's looking like it will play out is, I saw Poirier said he wants to sit out of the title if they're gonna put Chandler in, so we might get like Chandler versus Oliveira for the title, and then at that point Poirier was saying he wants to either have another go with McGregor, which to me doesn't make any sense right now, or maybe Diaz, which sure, I guess give him the Diaz fight, give him another money fight, he'll beat Diaz. It doesn't really hurt his title shot. So maybe you do Oliveira versus Chandler, like in I guess a more realistic sense of what might actually play out is you get Chandler, Oliveira, you throw Dustin to the side for a second, he fights Diaz, he beats Diaz. McGregor, in this scenario, he still probably fights someone like Ferguson. Maybe you give him Gaethje, but I don't think that's smart because he'll probably lose to Gaethje too. The way the leg kicks hurt him against Poirier, against Gaethje, it's not going to be good. But at least that's where I see things playing out right now. For who else do we have? Hooker. I don't know. Give him maybe Dos Anjos. That could be interesting. Or maybe Felder again. I don't know. He's in the weirdest spot here. He needs to get back to a top 5 fight. I don't think you give him someone in the top 5 at this point. You give him someone right outside of it. Yeah. And with that, we're going to wrap up this long video. I'm not going to lie. I probably could have cut a lot of this out, but honestly, at this point, I just want to get this video out. So there's going to be some there's going to be some little quiet parts or whatever, but if you're here, you already heard all that. So I appreciate y'all listening to the video and whatnot. Let me know in the comments what you think. Anything else you want to see a video of. I'm going to try, even though it's like a week late at this point, I'm going to try and get a Super Bowl kind of reaction video out. I got to do a UFC 258 Usman Burns prediction video. That's going to be out probably today or tomorrow. I haven't started it yet, but the fight's on Saturday, so I got to get it out soon. I wanted to do something on the Chelsea manager situation with them firing Lampard and hiring Tuchel, but I don't know, it might be too late. So I'm thinking about it, maybe not. There was something else too, but yeah. So I got a couple video ideas I want to get out. I guess it's a question of if I want to put the effort in to put them out. But yeah. No, go ahead, like, subscribe, and all that if y'all enjoyed the stuff. And thank y'all. This has been the Cap Report. Peace.